Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel. My name is L. Lauren, and I am the author of the story you're about to listen to. I know it's been a hot minute, and I apologize for that. Anyway, this week's story is called In Love with a Playboy Politician. The tropes are age gap, Playboy, politician, and Vegas marriage. I hope you guys enjoy it.
In Love with a Playboy Politician. In Love with series. Written by L. Lauren. Chapter 1. Kyren. Kyren didn't even leave the bed as his client got dressed, slipping on a fully designer outfit, from the briefs and socks to the white-bottomed loafers. The man had made more than enough small talk on the front end of their session that Kyren wasn't putting out any extra for the back end, especially since the client's kinks included leaving Kyren unsatisfied. He was tired, and he wanted to get himself off. The latter, at least, wasn't an option until the man was fully gone. As the older gentleman adjusted his tie in the mirror, Kyren flopped back on the bed with a sigh, tucking one arm under his head and matting down sweaty curls. Then the gentleman dug into his wallet, drawing out several crisp $100 bills and leaving them on the corner of Kyren's antique mahogany dresser. It was pristine on the outside, buffed to perfection, but the interior needed work. The drawers, if they opened at all, stuck on the push or pull, and the drawers' frames were warped as well. "Thanks for a good time," the man said, casting a look back at Kyren. Kyren quirked his lips in a sultry smile that didn't reach his eyes. "No, thank you for a good time," Kyren teased. The man thankfully saw himself out, and as soon as the front door closed, Kyren exhaled a sigh. He relieved himself, and right afterwards the front door opened and closed again. This time he bolted upright, digging around the floor for his briefs, and shimmied them on as he sprinted from his bedroom, down the hall, and into the main room of his luxury apartment. The place was nice, not a single person could deny it, and the area was even nicer. Kyren often felt out of place when he stopped into the organic health food store on the corner or picked up a rice bowl from the local takeaway spot, but the man who entered the apartment looked even more out of place than Kyren. "Where's the money at?" the man asked instantly, stomping through the room in a utilitarian pair of work boots. Steel-toed, in fact. "On the dresser," Kyren replied, hopping out of the way as he spoke. "You count it?" he asked next. This was a trick question. "I didn't touch it," Kyren answered. He'd played this game before. He recoiled into himself as the man passed him by and entered the bedroom. Good. He thumbed through it, taking the bulk for himself, before finally dropping $200 back on the dresser. "You musta made him real happy, because he left you a damn good tip and said he'd be into seeing you again next week." "Great." Kyren stood by the door into the bedroom, not entering. "Hey Samaj." "What?" he snapped. "I was wondering if, maybe, I could have an extra day off a week." "No." Samaj glared at him. "In fact, all this side-talking and smack-talking you do like I ain't help you with everything. You think you earned all this yourself? You think you're doing something?" Kyren started, but his words cut off as he watched Samaj work himself up. He was easy to work up. Well, he was now. When they'd first met, he hadn't been. He'd been nice, or at least he'd been nice enough. He'd been nice enough Kyren hadn't noticed all the red flags. He'd been nice enough Kyren had fallen for all the love-bombing and all the sweet words. He'd been nice enough Kyren had believed him when he said he could make all his troubles go away. And in some ways, he had. He had made all his old troubles go away, since he'd replaced them with new ones. "You hear me?" Samaj's voice cut into Kyren's thoughts. Before he could finish his response, a sharp pain radiated through him from a hard slap to his cheek. His teeth rattled. "I said, you need to come up with an extra $5,000 for me by the weekend." $5,000? Kyren blinked. "I can't come up with $5,000. What do you even?" It happened a second time. Already abused blood vessels popped around his eyes, and he knew already he was going to look patched together tomorrow morning. Which was great, since he apparently also needed to come up with a very large sum of money in less than 5 days. "Anything else you want to say, bitch?" "No," Kyren mumbled. "Wrong answer." "No, sir." "Good." Satisfied, he moved up to the bed and unfastened his pants, glaring down at Kyren. The metallic taste of blood had already flooded his mouth from the 2 punches, and as Kyren looked at Samaj, bile joined it. He wasn't looking for a 3rd punch though, so he serviced him until he released down his throat, and then let him have his way until he was spent. Kyren didn't have the energy to fight, and even if he did, Samaj was much stronger and angrier than he was. He was reasonably convinced Samaj would end him if the mood struck, if the right set of circumstances were satisfied. When Samaj had his fill, he left, and Kyren made himself as comfortable as he could on the bed. He propped himself up on his hip and tried to ignore the throbbing pain in his face as he grabbed his cell phone. For the moment, he ignored the messages from his family, the messages from various tricks, and he settled for browsing social media sites. He wanted to be anything but a rent boy for a few hours. He replied to a few messages from friends, engaged in a few moral arguments, and just as he was ready to put his cell phone down for the night, a message came through on his main account. The sender was unfamiliar to him, which wasn't altogether unusual. What was unusual, however, was the fact that the sender's address wasn't obscure or embarrassing. It said very clearly ward.white@beckett.org, and the subject was even stranger: marriage arrangement. Chapter 2. Carter. The girl sitting cross-legged at his kitchen table was nothing special. In fact, Carter didn't even know her name. What he did know was the fact that she had climaxed 4 times around him, and another with his tongue shoved inside her. He also knew he needed to replace his mattress after such acrobatics. "Can I get you anything to drink?" he said as he adjusted the band of his briefs on his hips. His toes curled against the morning-cold kitchen floors as he brewed a cup of coffee. Do you have a smoothie?" "I can order one for you, but I don't have any fruit on hand." "Oh," she replied. Okay. I'd like you to order me one." "Strawberry, please." Carter glanced over his shoulder at her, watching as she slouched into the seat and raked her fingers through her hair. She'd already found her cell phone, and her gaze was glued to it as her thumb swiped the screen. "Sure. I have a meeting soon, but I'll take it in my office. You can shower and leave when you want." "Okay." She smiled up at him. "What if I stay until you get back, and we repeat what happened last night? I'm off today, so." He grinned. "I'll think about it." She grinned too, and the apples of her cheeks bloomed with color as she went back to her cell phone. Carter finished brewing his coffee, poured it into a mug, and then wandered out of the kitchen. He got dressed in a casual pair of jeans and a t-shirt, and then entered his detached office, relaxing at the head of a long table as his team trickled in. "Mr. Beckett," they greeted him as they entered and took seats. The meeting was quick, as it was mostly updates on their statistics. The marketing team shared numbers. The PR team did the same. At the hour mark, everyone had presented relevant information, and Carter's manager, Ward White, called time on the meeting. As everyone filed out, Ward approached Carter. "Hey man," Carter greeted him, grabbing him in a hug. "How are you?" "I'm good, but better question is, how are you?" "What do you mean?" "Advertising is up, but website views and public opinion is down." "I noticed." "It happens sometimes." "Sure it does, but it doesn't need to if you plan to have a successful campaign this year. Running for Attorney General is no easy task. You've got to be better than a pretty face with good ideas." "What do you mean?" Carter said again, frowning as he sipped his coffee. "I mean, you have to be a family guy. It's what people are looking for. They don't want some single man, no kids, drinking and bar hopping on the weekends as their representative. They want someone who shares their same values." "I do share their values." "Maybe you do, but how do they know it? If you're seen with a different girl every week, it's hard to say you care about the modern family, after all. The men you want to vote for you, you're sleeping with their daughters all weekend. We need to change your image. He grunted. Sure. Good, so we already reached out to someone. The name he goes by is Kyren. You've already reached out to someone? How do you know he's my type? Ward looked up at Carter with a less than enthusiastic expression. It doesn't matter if he's your type. It matters if he can look good next to you and do the job well. We've been in correspondence with him to ensure he has the emotional and social capacity to fulfill the job appropriately. Carter shook his head. This is sick. No, this is strategic. Do you want to win? Yes. Then, this is the best way to get your approval rating up. Kyren looks approachable. So far he speaks well. You two will look good next to each other, and LGBT couples have an even better social acceptance rate than heterosexual couples. Carter shook his head again. This is absolutely insane. How much am I paying him to pretend to like me? Your financial team has budgeted a modest $50,000 for a full-time partner for the duration of your campaign and a few months into your election. Once the election is over, you two will enter a quiet separation and eventual divorce, citing that you grew apart. Interesting. Carter gulped down the last of his coffee. Can I see what my new husband looks like? You will on the day we meet at the courthouse for a marriage certificate. I'm marrying the guy without even seeing what he looks like? Oh, come on. You have to tell me at least something. Is he tall? Short? Fat? Ward pinched the bridge of his nose. If I told you anything, would it matter? This is the one the team has selected, and this is the one we're going with. I am sure you will be free to continue your current behaviors. I don't think the guy is going to care what you do with your spare time. We'll set him up with a section of your place, and all you two have to do is get along while you're in the public eye. He's ugly, Carter decided. He's ugly. This is why you're not going to show me. He looks acceptable. Your social behavior is already childish. If it wasn't, we wouldn't be in this situation at all. If you weren't so damn good at your job and skilled at debating your peers, this behavior would have already been your downfall. Well, it's not. Not yet, Ward corrected. You will be married Friday afternoon. I suggest you look your best for the occasion and try to leave the playboy attitude here. Carter sucked his teeth as he studied Ward. The man was, regrettably, correct, and Carter truly didn't know exactly why he had such a hard time giving up his lifestyle. He liked it, drinking most nights, falling asleep with whatever woman gave him the time of day. He had no interest in settling down, but according to all of their polling and interviewing, being good at your job wasn't enough anymore. Your personal life apparently mattered too. All right, Carter grunted. I'll be there with bells and whistles on, boss. Leave those at home and come in a suit, Ward shot back with a grin playing on his face. Chapter 3. Kyren. The proposal shocked him. The amount of money shocked him even more. It was an eye-watering amount of money for not entirely that much work. Kyren had to pretend to like someone and make high society connections at high society parties. It would eventually lead to more clients, and the possibility of more clients was even better than the money this politician was dropping on his company for a few months. The saddest part was it wasn't his weirdest request. It was, however, his highest paid weird request, and for this reason he was a bundle of nerves the day of. The client wanted everything to happen fast, so there was little time between the initial proposal and the fake wedding. In fact, he sent his measurements, and they sent him the suit, the shoes, and a driver. Samaj watched him get dressed with a seething look in his dark eyes. The man sat slouched on Kyren's sofa as Kyren unveiled the custom-tailored wool suit he had been instructed to wear. It had not only been tailored to his specifications, but the color had been selected based on what would look good on him. It wasn't just a white suit, it was a blue white, a cool white, as opposed to a warm one, and it did in fact look very good with Kyren's skin tone. Just because you got some high-paying clients don't mean you're worth anything, Samaj snapped as Kyren finished fastening the buttons on the blazer. You still know my rules. Don't be mouth-kissing anyone else. Be back here before 2 o'clock and update me every hour. I know your rules, Kyren murmured. You remind me of them every time I leave the house. Sometimes you get forgetful, Samaj said. Sometimes I get busy, Kyren snapped back. It was the wrong move, though, because it sent Samaj flying into action, a top-heavy bulldog puffing up his chest even more. What did you just say? Nothing. It didn't sound like nothing. You want to try that again? Kyren shuddered and glanced up at Samaj. You can't. I have to go soon, and I don't think my client would appreciate me having a black eye. Samaj seethed, actually snarling at Kyren's comment. He was right, and at least for the moment he had shirked a punishment. Kyren finished the last buttons of his suit as the vehicle pulled up to his building on schedule, and he climbed into the back, gripping his cell phone in his hand. They drove for a solid 30 minutes before they pulled into a parking lot. As he'd learned with Johns, Kyren watched the road, taking care to remember the route and any other potentially identifying locations. When they arrived, he texted Samaj and tucked his cell phone away. The driver opened the door for him. Thank you, Kyren whispered as he climbed out. He hadn't been sure of what to expect, but he hadn't expected to get married, in any universe, at a theme wedding venue. It was exceedingly common in Las Vegas, but Kyren had always pictured himself as a traditionalist. He had wanted his first wedding to be special, full of white and tulle and flowers. He didn't have a dog, but he wanted his partner to have an ever-faithful golden retriever who could carry the rings down the aisle. He stepped inside the venue and was instantly greeted by a pear-shaped older man with wispy white blonde hair and a frazzled expression. Kyren, the man greeted him, quickly extending a hand. I'm Ward White, Carter Beckett's manager. Thank you for joining us today. Mr. Beckett is, Ward searched around. I believe he's taking a call. He'll be around in a minute. Our service is scheduled for 11:45, so we've got about 15 minutes before then. Nice to meet you, Ward. Kyren gave him a firm handshake and exhaled a sigh of relief. So, I have the email exchange, of course, but can you tell me more about the situation, please? Sure. I'll be frank. Mr. Beckett has the knowledge and the skill for the position he's after, but he doesn't appeal to the people. People elect those whom they feel share their same values, and a young-looking playboy isn't it. He's in his late 30s, and he's still making a career out of sleeping with half the city on every business trip. It's time he settled down, but if he won't do it, at the very least, we can pretend he has. I see. Kyren nodded. This is where I come in, but why not a woman? We want to establish that he has classic family values, but not necessarily traditional ones. A woman would be too close to a religious lean, and we do not want to display it. All right. I suppose this works, Kyren chuckled. Is there anything else I should know? Sure, Ward said again. With no hesitation, he went into all manner of things related to politics. He discussed the advertising budget, Beckett's platforms, and his approval rating. He moved on quickly to their upcoming engagements, reminding Kyren clothing would be provided. Do you have any questions? Not right now. I think you covered everything. Oh wait, there is one last thing. How would you prefer to get paid? I can do a money transfer to a bank, or in cash installments, please. Kyren cut him off. I know it is a bit archaic, but it is a little easier for me to manage. What is archaic? A deep rolling baritone voice cut in from behind Kyren. Sir, Ward grinned, I'd like you to meet your new husband. Kyren sucked in his breath, blinking slowly, and then turned on his heels to face the politician. With Ward greeting him, he hadn't known what to expect from Carter, but the pair were opposites in almost every way. Ward was on the shorter side, but Carter was tall. Ward had a belly fitting of a middle-aged man with several children, but Carter had none of it. His body was tight, his shoulders broad and shrinking down to a pinch-toned waist. He had a presence Ward could only dream of having. "Hi," Kyren breathed, placing a hand on the wall to steady himself. Not a single John had ever made him, well, feel anything, but something about Carter was different. Carter sent a chill down his spine and a heat up it. Knots in his belly twisted and turned into an explosion of butterflies. "You're Kyren?" Carter Beckett asked, adjusting his understated black-on-black designer watch. "Yes. You're Playboy Politician Carter Beckett." The man chuckled. His square everyman features softened. "Is this what they're calling me on the streets?" "No, just what your manager calls you." He laughed again, looking Kyren over from top to bottom. "Good choice, Ward. He looks exquisite, very sexy. I'm not going to mind having this one on my arm for a few months." Kyren stood there stock still, as Carter looked him over, surveyed him. He could have been mad, or perhaps should have been mad, but something was very sexy about the way Carter looked at him. He looked at him like, well, he was the last good meal on earth, and Carter hadn't eaten in weeks, though they all knew he'd likely eaten the night before. He had a hunger in his gaze Kyren was almost desperate to satisfy. How traditional was this man? How real was this wedding? Was it only in form, or was Carter old-fashioned enough to consummate their union right after their vows? The very thought of Carter on top of him, covering him, had Kyren's heart racing and left him unable to hold Carter's gaze. "Your suit looks lovely on you," Carter said, breaking the tense silence between them. After another moment, they approached the doors leading them to the officiant's room. Carter extended an arm to Kyren. "Shall we?"
Hey guys, I hope you're enjoying the story so far. I also want to let you guys know that this story and many of my others are available for purchase both in ebook and audiobook form. If you're interested in purchasing either version, you can go to www.payhip.com/LLaurenAuthor, or you can check the link in the description box. Thanks.
Chapter 4. Carter. He'd never envisioned getting married, and he surely hadn't envisioned getting married in front of a man wearing a cheap wig and doing an even cheaper impression of Elvis. Thank you very much," played in his mind on repeat, as the man went through the legalities of their union, and at the end, well, he announced them married and struck a pose. Kyren, his new husband, chuckled at least, and Carter couldn't help a smile. "Usually this is the part where the new couple kisses," Kyren offered, twisting to face Carter. "And I don't care how silly it is, I want your lips on mine." Kyren's forwardness sent a shudder through Carter, but he obliged him, cupping the younger man's face in his hands and planting a gentle but firm kiss on his lips. "More," Kyren whispered, arching onto his toes to kiss him again. The officiations were scheduled in 15-minute blocks, and the whole service hadn't taken much more than 5 minutes. The other 10 minutes were kissing. Kyren had been hungry, and he worked up an appetite in Carter. The only problem was Carter didn't know if he was acting or being genuine, and worse, he didn't know which he wanted either. When they left the venue, Ward slapped Carter's shoulder affectionately. "Nice touch in there. You two look like two desperate young lovers." "It was perfect." "Thank you," Kyren chuckled, grabbing Carter's hand and squeezing it. "It certainly helps that my client is extremely attractive. I'm not going to mind being stuck with him for several months. Anyway, where are we off to now?" "Technically, I believe we're supposed to have a honeymoon, or do we have to pay extra for it?" Carter asked, grinning at the wit in his own question. It could have been out of line, but Kyren had been the one to urge the train in such a direction. Carter just wanted to know how far the train went. "I've always wanted a trip to the Maldives, all expenses paid." Kyren's eyelids fluttered, and he grinned right back. "It could happen." Oh really? I believe I'm going to enjoy being married to a politician." "Never thought someone would say that," Carter chuckled as he led Kyren to the vehicle he arrived in. "I've got appointments this afternoon, as this was quite a spur-of-the-moment decision, but if you are free tonight, I'd love your company for dinner." Kyren smiled. Okay. Pick me up then. Sounds good. Carter lingered at the vehicle before he closed the door and tapped the side, instructing the driver to leave. He's cute, Ward said, stepping up to Carter's side as the vehicle left. And witty. Yeah. You think you can deal with him for a couple months? Carter shuddered. He was looking forward to dealing with Kyren for a couple months. Yeah. As I stated, I have meetings, so we should get back to the office. I know you have meetings. I made your schedule. Ward chuckled, shaking his head. They climbed in the car together and drove back to the office in silence. Ward was on his cell phone, updating everyone on the progress of the marriage PR stunt, and Carter was thinking about Kyren. In fact, Carter thought about Kyren all afternoon. He thought about Kyren so much he couldn't remember what all his meetings were about, but by 5 o'clock he was rushing for his cell phone. He texted Kyren immediately, and Kyren answered back within a few minutes. The conversation was brief, just enough to establish dinner plans, and an hour later Carter was in front of Kyren's place, holding his breath as he waited for the man to emerge. He originally hadn't had plans for the evening. There was a charity dinner, but he'd planned to skip it. However, after seeing Kyren in a suit, after kissing his lips, the charity dinner was the perfect excuse to spend more time with his now husband. "You look exquisite," Carter complimented as Kyren approached the vehicle. It wasn't a lie. "Thank you." Kyren smiled as he slipped into the vehicle alongside Carter. "So what kind of event is this?" "Oh, it's a charity event for the local zoo, I think. It's something about funding a new exhibit or play area for the children. I wasn't paying attention." Kyren blinked. "You weren't paying attention?" "Nah," Carter shrugged. "We go to tons of these each quarter, and they start blurring together. The only reason they want you there is for you to give them a check, so they can have their project funded." "I see." Kyren frowned as he sat back in his seat. "What? You're the type of guy to drop the cash without really caring much about the actual subject? People need money, sure, but if you're dropping money without connecting with anyone, it's just going to feel empty." Carter shrugged again. "Did I mention I go to tons of these each quarter?" "You did, and it doesn't change my opinion. If I have to go, then this isn't just a stop-off to write a check and do something else. You're going to pay attention, and you're going to care, at least a little, about any organization you donate to." "What if I don't?" Carter arched an eyebrow. "You are too old to play this game," Kyren shot back, clicking his seatbelt and crossing his legs. The rest of the drive was quiet, in part because Carter had been mildly shocked into silence. Kyren looked pleasant at least as he peered out the window, and as much as Carter had been hoping Kyren was full of empty threats, he wasn't. The pair of them talked to everyone at the event, at least twice. By the time the event was over, he'd heard more about the benefits of immersive learning and animals than he ever wanted to know. He also knew all about their conservation efforts as well, and where the money they would charge daily for the play area was going. To Carter's own displeasure, it did make him more inclined to fund the project. To Carter's pleasure, Kyren seemed invested in the project too. At the end of the event, they collapsed back into Carter's vehicle. Kyren chuckled. "What?" Carter glanced at his cell phone, scrolling through a log of messages before tucking it away again. "Did you have fun?" "Plenty of fun." Kyren smiled. "Do you think we've got time to grab something to eat? There's a burger place downtown I used to love growing up." "You grew up downtown?" Kyren raised both eyebrows. Carter nodded. "Huh. Well, all right then. Take me to your favorite burger place and order whatever you think I would like." Carter obliged him, and then did him one better. He took them to the park after the burger place, and they ate under the stars. "This is a good burger," Kyren exclaimed, groaning as he bit into it. "Damn. You're welcome. How have they been hiding this place all these years? These prices are pre-recession prices too." "Why do you care about the price?" "You didn't buy it," Carter teased. I can't help it. Smiling, Kyren took another bite. Thank you, though, for a fun evening and a great meal. You're welcome. Always. Carter went back to eating, finishing off his burger and his fries with a sigh. As he thought about it, he'd never spent so much time around someone who wasn't working for him. He had his sexual partners, but he didn't spend the day with them or anything. They came over, they got what they wanted, and they left. Carter had appreciated the simplicity, but Kyren was different. He actually, enjoyed being with him. He sipped his drink as Kyren finished up the last bites of his burger. The other man licked his fingers, with a little sound of pleasure. Really, thank you again for the meal. It's not a problem, Carter repeated. Great. Kyren beamed. When he looked away from Carter, he dug his cell phone out of his pocket and glimpsed the screen. All the cheerfulness fell away. In fact, Kyren looked sick. Oh fuck. I have to go. I forgot I had to finish something. I can take you home, Carter announced, gathering their trash as Kyren jumped to his feet. No. I just really need to go. I'll get a taxi. It'll take longer, Carter said. I don't mind taking you home, really. Kyren wet his lips. I don't think you taking me home is a good idea right now. I'll talk to you later, okay? I'll text you when I get home. Kyren promised before he turned and ran down the street. Chapter 5. Kyren. He held his breath as he climbed out of the taxicab in front of his apartment. The air outside was still, and the area was quiet. Even though those things were normal, they set him on edge tonight. Kyren's date with Carter had been fun. He'd forgotten all about his situation, Samaj, and even his drowning loneliness, but it all came rushing back as the distance between him and the door shrank. Trembling hands fit the key into the lock, but the door was already unlocked, and it swung open at the gentlest bit of force. Samaj sat directly in front of the door. He was the first thing Kyren saw. Did you have fun? Samaj asked through gritted teeth. His hands gripped the sides of the chair he easily filled out. In the chair he looked more menacing, like the chair had become a part of him and increased both his size and strength. It was okay, Kyren lied, sucking in a breath as he closed the door behind him. He'd gotten good at decoding Samaj's moods, and this one was no subtlety. Samaj was livid, seething, and dripping with his anger. He wasn't good at controlling those moods, though. Some people in Kyren's position had learned how to sway their bosses, how to push them in one direction or another, but Kyren hadn't learned the technique yet, and Samaj wasn't easily swayed. I bet it was okay. So okay, you forgot to check in all night and even missed curfew. Kyren didn't say anything. His throat had closed up around any words, attempting to pass across his lips. I was worried about you, Samaj continued. Now his words were buttery soft and deceptively smooth. I have these rules so I can keep you safe. Months ago, Kyren fell for this. He believed Samaj. He believed the rules were all about keeping him safe, and he had appreciated it. He had fallen into the romance of it all, loving a man who was strong and ruthless and a little controlling, but it had been a charade. Kyren didn't buy into it anymore, not really, but Samaj still threw it at him sometimes. Samaj still teased him with the idea of kindness. Kyren started, forcing the sound out, but he shook his head at the rest. Months ago, he had fallen for Samaj's sweetness, but now he'd also experienced as hardness too. The physical pain was its own challenge, but it was nothing compared to the sheer anticipation Kyren had when Samaj chose to be kind. Kyren was on pins and needles as Samaj lectured him on staying out late and neglecting to check in. He circled him like a predator stalking its prey, stepping close whenever he got too comfortable with the distance, until he was trembling like a leaf in wind. At this point, he wanted Samaj to hit him or kick him or slap him. He wanted whatever was going to happen to be over with, so he could move on. I don't want to have to do this, you know. If you just be good and follow the rules, and not make me worry. Samaj's voice was still honey-sweet, as he stood in front of Kyren. He gripped Kyren's chin in his hand and jerked him forward. "Please," Kyren croaked as he shrank away from Samaj. "Not my face. Carter the politician." "Fine," Samaj snarled. "Thank?" Before Kyren could finish the phrase, Samaj rammed his fist into his gut, and for a moment everything went white. And for the next moment, he wished everything had stayed white. He collapsed to the ground with the punch, and his body curled up in an effort to protect other vulnerable parts, but Samaj was just getting started. He kicked Kyren, first in the back, and when he sprawled out from the pain, he kicked him in the stomach again. Then he crouched on top of him, raining a flurry of punches to any open bit of skin he could get to. Except his face. He left his face alone. By the time he was finished, Kyren's whole body ached with pain, and bruises had already started blooming. He'd cried and begged and pleaded with Samaj to stop, but all his noises had only spurred the man on more. It wasn't until he resigned that Samaj finally let up, and he lay there with tears streaming down his face and pooling on the carpet, as Samaj grabbed his keys and jacket and left. He didn't relax until he heard the man's car revving in the parking lot. Months ago, his neighbors would have checked on him. Sometimes they knocked on the door during the altercations, peeking around Samaj's slender form to lay eyes on Kyren, but Kyren had been schooled on lying. It didn't take too many beatings to work it out, but after a while, his neighbors made it easier on them all and stopped coming by. He imagined them pulling their curtains and turning up their televisions, drowning out the unmistakable noises. He didn't blame them. He wasn't sure how long he stayed there, but eventually his cell phone rang, and he dug it out of his pocket with a wince, placing it on the floor next to him. "Hello?" he gasped as he answered the call. "Hey, Kyren. It's Carter." Kyren's face screwed up, and a fresh wave of tears hit his cheeks. "Hi, Carter," he whispered. "Sorry if this is a bad time. You said you'd text me when you got back to your place, and I never got a text, so I wanted to make sure you had made it okay." "I made it okay," Kyren said through gritted teeth. "I'm home." "Okay, good." Carter paused. "Is everything all right? Did you take care of everything you needed to take care of?" "Yes," Kyren hissed. "I did, yes." "Good. Well, I also wanted to let you know I had a really good time hanging with you. I know this is pretty unconventional, but you're really good company." "Thank you. And I don't want to be too forward, but I was wondering when I'd see you again." "Why, your schedule says next week." It hurt to speak, hurt to take in breath, but Kyren couldn't help the little smile playing on his face. "I want to see you sooner than next week. How about Saturday night?" "I look forward to it," Kyren whispered. "Me too. I'm glad you're home safely," and Carter cleared his throat. "Have a good rest of your night." The call ended, and Kyren flopped onto his back, rolling his eyes closed with a smile. Chapter 6. Kyren. The beatdown had been intense, and his whole body was black and blue the days after. Samaj had given him 2 gifts, though. First, he'd left his face alone, thankfully, and 2, he'd also left him alone too. It wasn't unusual for Samaj to ignore Kyren after these altercations, to stay away long enough for Kyren's neighbors to forgive them for the disruption. The distance often made Kyren anxious, but this time he appreciated it. Carter, and the rather massive sum of money his PR team had paid, had made it so Kyren didn't need any extra clients, and because of it, he actually had time to focus on healing his body. Once the shock and the initial pain of the beatdown had subsided, Kyren had dragged himself to the bed and collapsed into it, content to ride out the healing process alone. He slept off and on, hobbled to the kitchen for a meal here and there, and hobbled to the bathroom equally as frequently. He never understood why, but the pain was always the worst on the 3rd and 4th day. On the 4th day, as he was climbing back into his bed, the doorbell rang. It wasn't Samaj, because the man had already texted a slew of insults sandwiched around reminding Kyren to be better behaved next time. It wasn't any sort of food delivery either, because Kyren hadn't ordered anything. With a groan, he hobbled to the door and cracked it open. Carter stood on the other side, hands clasped behind his back and fine suit sparkling in the dim porch light. "Hey," he greeted Kairen. "You ready for tonight?" "What's tonight?" Kyren knit his brows together and straightened up as he let the door swing open the rest of the way. "Tonight is Saturday night." Carter narrowed his eyes a little bit as he scanned over Kyren. "Are you okay?" "What do you mean?" Kyren gripped the doorframe as the pain crawled through him. "We had plans tonight." Carter's lips quirked into a warm smile. "But if you're not feeling up to it, it's all good." No. I want to see you, I do. Let me just go get dressed. You can come inside." Kyren ushered him in and closed the door. "I'm sorry. I completely forgot about our plans. I've had a lot going on." "It's no big deal." Carter stepped inside the apartment, adjusting his watch as he scanned the apartment's interior. "Did everything get taken care of?" "Everything?" Kyren blinked. "Yeah. You said you had a lot going on, so did it all get taken care of?" "Oh." Cheeks burning, Kyren took carefully placed steps around the room, focusing on keeping his balance and hiding his pain more than answering Carter's question. "Yes. It was all taken care of." "Good." "Yep." Kyren took another step, a second, and a third as his blood pounded in his ears. He was pushing his strength, and the growing pain compounded. He braced himself against the wall as his sight narrowed to pinpoints and the ground rushed towards him. "Hey," Carter called. "Holy fuck." Kyren's eyes rolled back, and in those last seconds of consciousness he steeled himself for impact. It never came, and when his senses returned to him, he was stretched out on the couch. Carter's attention was fixed on him, sharp and unyielding. "Are you sure you're okay?" Carter asked, voice edged with a hardness Kyren wasn't used to hearing from him. "I'm fine really," Kyren mumbled. "Then what just happened?" Kyren shook his head. "All right." Carter's tone sent a chill down Kyren's spine. His voice was similar to Samaj's, but imbued with more kindness and less insecurity. He reached for Kyren's shirt, tugging it up towards his chest as he fought against him. "Don't," Kyren whispered, swatting at Carter's hands, but it was too late. His objection betrayed him even more than the bruising did. "The fuck is this?" Carter growled. "Did you get jumped or something?" No. I didn't get jumped. It's fine. Everything's fine, really." Still snarling, Carter glanced over Kyren's back and legs. "You tell me who did this, or I'm going to have to figure it out on my own, and I assure you I will figure it out." Kyren's eyes shot open, and he stared at Carter. Carter wasn't like Samaj, full of empty threats and empty promises. The way he said it, it excited Kyren and scared him at the same time. "Please don't. This is fucked up, Kyren. No one should be treating you like this." "I know. It's not going to happen again. It's really my fault, actually, for—" "It is never your fault if someone else puts their hands on you." Carter's growl got louder. "Tell me who did this." Kyren blinked slowly. "Samaj," he whispered. "Samaj. That fucking punk." Carter's face screwed up in displeasure, and usually warm eyes grew ice cold. Kyren blinked. "You know him?" "Do I know him? I used to run with him when we were kids. I used to get bused to his neighborhood for school." "Why?" Carter bristled and clenched his jaws together. "Better schools." He adjusted the cuffs of his shirt and exhaled a breath. "I remember him in the yard when we'd play pickup games after school. Always thought it was a stupid fucking name. James spelled backwards." The disdain dripped from his tone with each word. "How'd you get wrapped up with him?" "With lies," Kyren whispered. "I feel so foolish now, for believing anything he said." "It happens," Carter grunted. Then he dug his cell phone out of his pocket, dialed a number and put it to his ear. Kyren held his breath. "What's good?" Carter said when the person on the other line answered. "Me? You know? Same ol', same ol'. Hey, my man, I got a question for you. You know where Samaj kicks up?" There was a pause. I gotta take care of something. Yeah, I'll swing by, sure. Cool. Later. The call ended, and Kyren rolled his gaze up to Carter, regarding him in a new light. There had always been a little darkness, a little edge to him, but now Kyren understood why. Go get in the car, Carter said. Kyren didn't object. Chapter 7. Carter. Carter seethed the entire drive, rolling up his sleeves as Kyren sat in the back seat beside him, staring out the window. He'd promised to leave some things in the past, but hearing the brokenness in Kyren's voice, noting the careful way he moved, and then seeing the blue and yellowing bruises all over his body, made him change his mind. It was like a switch flipped on, and he remembered every second of running the streets. He'd always had a good head on his shoulders, always had the potential to be someone, according to his teachers and his mentors, but it hadn't stopped him from running with his friends, knocking over liquor stores, and finding other shit to get into from sundown to sunup. He had been ordered to leave it behind him. It hadn't been his choice, but no one ever stays lucky. His friends left him to get caught, and he got caught. He got loaded up in the back of a cop car, carted right down to the station, and locked up until a judge could see him several weeks later. The funny thing about jail is it's even scarier than the streets. The streets, at least, you know who you're running with. In jail, you're next to anyone. Murderers, drunks, and credit card hackers were all in there together, but the judge saved his life. He took a look at him in his ill-fitting clothes with a blazing fire in his eyes, looked at his grades, looked at his history, and he offered him two options. Option 1 was enroll in the local community college while performing community service and report to an officer bi-weekly. Option 2 was spend his time in prison instead. For his mother's sake, he picked option 1. He needed to thank that judge. However, the feeling of some things never faded. He would never forget the feeling of skin into skin, bones cracking, and the rush of adrenaline with it. He'd never forget how they settled things on the street. His buddy had given him directions straight to Samaj's place, no hesitation, and he pulled up in his black luxury car, approaching the door with Kyren trembling behind him. Kyren had pleaded with him, had begged him not to confront Samaj, but he didn't care. He wasn't scared of some lanky little punk with a goofy name. He took in a deep breath, knocked on the door and waited. It took 63 seconds for Samaj to open the door. Carter counted. And when the door opened, Samaj's mouth dropped open. Carter? See money. He blinked, jerking his head back as his eyebrows rose towards his receding hairline. Samaj, Carter greeted him with an icy tone. Samaj extended his hand, palm sideways, waiting for a greeting, but Carter glanced at the hand and then lifted his cold gaze back up to the other man. All right. What's up, man? How can I say this? Carter shrugged out of his jacket and rolled up the sleeves of his shirt, revealing faded black tattoos spiraling down both arms. I'm about to beat the shit out of you for laying your hands on Kyren. And if you ever do it again, I won't be as nice. Man, you really came all this way to talk about some bottom? Some bottom? Carter rumbled. I always knew you were weak, but I didn't think you were a punk. Beating on people smaller than you, using them to do your dirty work. The weakest man on these streets is a pimp, because he's the only one who thinks abusing those smaller than him is okay. Carter didn't wait for a reply. In the next breath, his fist connected with Samaj's face. And again, until the skin on his knuckles split open, until there was so much blood on his fist and Samaj's face he couldn't separate one from the other. He stopped when Samaj went limp in his grip, just before he passed out from the pain. Please? Samaj gurgled around his busted lip and shaken teeth. Please what? Have more mercy on you than you do for your slaves? I will, because I'll give you the opportunity to do the right thing. Carter slammed his fist into Samaj's face one more time before he threw the man back and stood up. Adrenaline pumped through him, had him fully on edge, but he bridled it, grabbing his shirt and his jacket and turning for the door. Oh my God, Kyren whispered. Carter's pulsing vision cleared, and he rested his gaze on Kyren. What? Kyren shook his head and stepped backwards into the front door before reaching down and fumbling with the handle. Nothing. With bloody fingers, Carter fumbled with his sleeves. No. I like the view. Carter paused, stealing another glance at Kyren before nodding. Fine. He dropped his sleeve and approached the door, jerking it open and ushering Kyren outside before he stepped out with him. The night was still and peaceful, as if the altercation hadn't happened. You're coming home with me, just in case that piece of shit tries anything else. I don't have to come home with you. I'll be fine. I'll be safe at my place. I am sure of it. They reached the car, and Carter opened the back seat for Kyren. I have a detached mother-in-law suite you can live in. I will not bother you, but inside my security you will be safe. Okay, but I have my rent and I have to make money. If you have expenses, we can increase what we're providing you as compensation, Carter said in a matter-of-fact tone. No. You shouldn't. Your team is already paying a healthy amount for my service, and I have barely even provided you with anything. Carter grunted. All right. You're going to my place, and you're staying there, and I don't want to hear another word about it. You're safe there, and I don't trust that clown not to come back round and lay hands on you again. From inside the vehicle, Kyren's back straightened and his eyes went wide for a moment. Oh, he breathed. Okay. Sure. Good. Carter climbed into the vehicle and closed the door. Driver. Take us to my place. Sure thing, sir. Chapter 8. Kyren. He was a ball of emotions, of nerves on fire as he sat next to Carter. He didn't move, and not only because his body was still healing from his beatdown earlier in the week. This time he didn't move because he didn't know what to do. He wanted to jump on Carter, to hug him and kiss him, and then even more, and none of those things were part of their pre-established arrangement. Their arrangement was business, not even pleasure. Just business. He was hired as a companion, not a bedfellow. Perhaps they had shared some intimate glances and a kiss or two, but this was different. Kyren wanted everything. Thank you, Kyren whispered about 10 minutes into the drive. For everything. I noticed you have some tattoos. I do, Carter grunted. Where did you get them? Carter gave a sidelong glance to Kyren and grunted once again. My friend did them for me. They look homegrown. Because they are. I didn't notice them before. Kyren trailed. I've only ever seen you in sleeves. That was intentional. Why? I would never judge someone for having tattoos, even homegrown ones. Carter chuckled. It's not just about you. Everything we do is for the campaign, whether it's me wearing sleeves or me hiring someone to marry so I look like a family man. Listen. I have family values. I have always supported the family and wanted one of my own, but if these voters knew my life, they wouldn't want to vote for me. How do you know? Carter wet his lips. We've done interviews. Interviews are just on-paper questions. Anyone can say they don't support something until it's staring them in the face. So what are you saying? I'm saying, Kyren started, that if you were to talk honestly about what you've been through, I think your supporters would appreciate it. It makes you real, much realer than supporting archaic family values. I do support those too, though. And you can. Kyren smiled. You can just do it while talking about everything you've experienced. And I'll support you. I'll be right there holding your hand. Yeah? As my friend or as my fake husband? Does it matter? Carter nodded. As both, and perhaps your new boyfriend. Perhaps, Carter mused with a growing smile. All right. Are you hungry? I could eat, but I'd rather be at your place or, at least somewhere comfortable if we can. Sure, I'll order something in as we get the suite ready for you. Kyren tried to settle as they drove, but his mind still pulled him all over the place. He was almost embarrassed to admit that Carter beating up Samaj had turned him on so much, but he kept imagining Carter's rough hands being the utmost gentle with him, touching all over him, holding him close. He'd already felt that dichotomy a little, but he was starting to crave it. As they pulled into Carter's driveway, the politician looked at Kyren. "How are you feeling?" he asked, arching a dark eyebrow. "How should I be feeling?" Kyren asked back, biting his bottom lip as he turned his attention to Carter. He could answer perhaps too honestly, and say he was feeling about like a rabbit in springtime. He could also take the more subtle approach and say he was just fine, but both of those answers gave only a piece of the puzzle. "I guess you can feel any way you want. I'd imagine you feel tired and a little relieved." "I do feel relieved," Kyren admitted and glanced up at the driver before back at Carter. "Can I tell you everything once we're inside?" "Sure. I'll meet you inside. I need to make a few calls first." Shuddering, Kyren nodded. "Okay." He stumbled his way out of the car and walked to the door. Without a key, Kyren approached it on faith, but as he got closer, the front door opened for him, and an older, smiling gentleman ushered him inside. "May I get you anything, sir?" the older man asked. "No, please. I'd like to sit. Mr. Beckett told me he'd be having a visitor. It's been a while since he's had anyone over." Kyren inclined his head. "How long is a while?" "I'd suppose a few weeks now. However, my memory isn't the greatest." The man's smile didn't falter, but it changed from pleasant to saccharine in the blink of an eye and back again just as fast. "Oh, when he has guests over, what usually happens?" "He ushers them straight to his bedroom." "Ah." Kyren smirked. "I see. Well, would you mind leading the way to his bedroom?" "Of course not, sir." The man nodded, and as Carter took his calls outside, Kyren wandered through his house, following after the older gentleman to the bedroom. "Here we are, sir. If you need anything, you can use the intercom system." He motioned to an absolutely archaic speaker. Amidst all the updated and truly bank account breaking items, the speaker was out of place, and Kyren laughed. "Yes, sir." "Okay. Thank you." Kyren chuckled as he kicked off his shoes by the door and browsed the room. It was rather nice, complete with luxury sheets and an ensuite with 2 sinks, a jacuzzi, and a separate shower. Kyren took advantage of the shower, washing off some of the stress of the day, even though all his purple and yellow bruising stayed. Then he strolled out of the bathroom, back into the main part of the bedroom, and draped himself across Carter's bed. He waited. He dozed as he waited, dipping in and out of the most comfortable sleep he'd ever had, but when the door opened he woke up and pushed himself up to his elbows. "Hi," he greeted the entrant with a sleep-drunk smile. Chapter 9. Carter. He'd gotten caught up with calls the second they reached his place. First it was his political manager, then it was his public relations manager, and then it was his mother, all of whom were concerned about the breaking news story he was featured in. With effort, Carter soothed them all before he went inside, shed his clothes, and escaped to the kitchen for a nightcap. He poured himself a shot of bourbon, as his longtime doorman dipped into the room with him. "Sir, your guest is in your room. I believe he showered and is now relaxing." "Thank you," Carter rumbled, taking another sip of his drink. "May I speak openly?" "Of course. I do not know what is between you two, but if he makes you turn into the man you once were as opposed to the man you are today, he may not be good for you." "He didn't turn me into anything. I was always this person. I just stopped lying to myself. Besides, he needed the help, and I gave it to him." The elder man nodded. "I understand. I am glad you were there to help him." "Yeah. Me too," Carter grunted, finished his shot, and then looked at the man again. "Thank you for everything you've done for me." "You're welcome. And if there is anything you or your guest needs tonight, don't hesitate to call." "I won't," Carter said as he advanced to his bedroom. He was giddy as he reached the door, nervous and excited for what he might find, and he took a deep breath before he pushed the door open. "Hi," Kyren said, sleep heavy in his voice. Carter smiled. "Hey." He kicked off his shoes and shed his clothes before he joined Kyren at the bed. "Do you mind if I—" "Please?" Kyren wiggled over, making space for Carter as Carter climbed into the bed. Once comfortable, Kyren encroached, slithering halfway on top of Carter and kissing his stubbled jawline. "I know I've told you thank you, but I want to show you thanks too." Carter groaned at the thought, eyelids fluttering as Kyren continued planting kisses along his jawline, neck, and bare shoulders. "Take what you want." "Anything I want?" Kyren asked with a devil's glint in his gaze. Grinning, Carter nodded. "Anything you want." "Okay," Kyren breathed. "Then I want you. First in my mouth, then inside my ass. I want you to fuck me like you'd fuck your husband because that's who I am, right?" Kyren trailed his lips over Carter's chest and down a dusting of fine curls to his belly. "Yeah. It's who you are." "Good," Kyren concluded as he peeled back Carter's briefs. Carter lifted his hips to assist, and Kyren wiggled between his legs, sliding down so his mouth was level with Carter's crotch. Kyren nuzzled into him, purring and lavishing him with kisses and affection. He handled him, rolling his cock between the palms of his hand, kissing the tip, and then finally taking it into his mouth. Carter groaned. He'd been sucked before, but this was different. Usually, his partners did it more as a favor, as an expectation, but Kyren was enjoying himself. He was enjoying teasing and playing and tasting Carter. He had a bright smile on his face when he was rewarded with pearly beads of pre-cum. "You taste good." Kyren cooed. "Bet you taste better," Carter growled in response, petting through Kyren's hair as he continued his business. "Are you going to find out? Are you asking me to?" Kyren gave a gentle nod. "Please?" "All right. Then bring your ass up here so I can." He could take the deep, heady rumble out of his voice, and he didn't want to. At his words, Kyren shivered and did as he was told. Carter placed his hands on Kyren's slim hips and held him in place as he swallowed him. He'd never gone down on a man before, but the taste of Kyren's salty pre-cum on his tongue spurred him forward until he was ravenous and desperate for more. Their playful foreplay quickly turned into intense intercourse, with Kyren clawing Carter's shoulders and Carter fisting a handful of Kyren's hair. Kyren was the first one to see and accept all parts of Carter. He was the first one Carter could be free around. The first one Carter had truly been intimate with, and it showed when they had an explosive shared climax. Afterwards, Carter collapsed back with a sigh and pulled Kyren into him, wrapping an arm around his body as they fell asleep together. He wasn't sure how long he slept like that, but it was the best sleep he'd ever had, and he growled when a knock at his door roused him from it. "Come in," he grunted, pulling fluffy covers over Kyren as Ward stepped inside his bedroom. "Good morning, Mr. and Mr. Beckett," Ward greeted them both, casting a concerned look to Carter as he did. "It is a good morning. How can I help you?" Carter held the still sleeping Kyren tighter. "That fool you beat up, Samaj?" "Yeah, him. He went to the press about your altercation. He's saying all sorts of ridiculous stuff. I know you used to be in a street organization, but he's saying you were almost put away for attempted murder. He's saying you came and assaulted him at his house. The news is buzzing with it." Carter sighed, peering down at Kyren. He held the smaller man even closer as Ward continued his near-panicked worrying. "Carter, this isn't a joke. We've worked so hard on this campaign. We're still working on it, and if it's not one thing, it's another. Do you even want to win this? Because I don't think you do. We cleaned up your Playboy image, and now you're assaulting people on the street? Carter? Are you listening? Let me talk to them." "Who?" "The press." "Let me talk to them," Carter repeated. Ward groaned. "I don't know. I'm not sure it's wise. If I keep hiding, everything is going to get worse. Call the press and tell them I will be ready for a conference in an hour." The concern didn't leave Ward's face, but he nodded. An hour later, the press were at the house. Carter and Kyren were dressed and sitting side by side. Kyren smiled up at Carter, and Carter squeezed Kyren's hand. Then he turned to the reporter. "My name is Carter Beckett, and I want to represent the people. However, in order to fairly represent you all, I have to fairly represent myself." Epilogue. 6 months later. Kyren. When he emerged from the room he shared with Carter and entered the kitchen, breakfast was already set out for him. It was a light breakfast, with a spread of juicy sliced fruit, a cup of yogurt, and 4 pieces of triangle-cut toast. He had reluctantly dragged himself out of bed, mid-morning, after having yet another late night on Carter's arm at a fundraising campaign. The past 6 months had been a whirlwind. Carter had won the election. His approval ratings had skyrocketed after his confession, after his full honesty. Since his win, they were both busy. They attended most events together, but some daytime events Carter attended alone. Kyren's popularity at the events had caused him to have his own list of speaking engagements. But today was a relatively quiet day. It was a Sunday, and while Carter still had a meeting with his campaign manager, now turned personal assistant, Kyren was free to enjoy a lazy breakfast and scroll the news on his cell phone. Ever since Carter and Samaj's altercation, his cell phone had been suspiciously quiet. A few clients reached out, but he declined them. Samaj hadn't texted him a single time, and it felt weird. He had cared for the man, perhaps even loved him, but Carter's threat was holding steady. Kyren had even asked around to find that Samaj hadn't even been running the streets much. He wanted to be elated, but at the same time, his contract with Carter was coming to a close. They hadn't specified a firm end date, but given Carter had gotten everything he wanted out of the contract, Kyren sensed the end, and he didn't know what he was going to do. He couldn't continue doing speaking engagements, and he didn't want to go back to working the streets either. Now he was too famous, too easily recognized. Plus, he'd done the one thing he never should have done. He caught feelings. He liked Carter. He liked him far more than he should have. Carter had done everything Samaj had promised and never delivered. Carter took care of him. The car was always ready when he wanted it, complete with a driver willing to take him anywhere he asked. His favorite foods were always stocked in the refrigerator. Most importantly, he always knew where Carter was. Whether he was staying out late at an event or hanging with his friends, Carter made sure he knew. He didn't have to worry about it, and it was a comfort. Their intimate relationship was on point too. He wasn't sure if Carter had many same-gender encounters, but he still didn't disappoint. It wasn't just about Carter. If anything, Carter put far more focus on making sure Kyren enjoyed himself. And oh, he did. Many times a night, in fact. As he finished his breakfast, Carter emerged from the attached conference room at his house, slapping Ward on the shoulder with a cheerful laugh. He had become much lighter since he had been honest, since he had married the person he had been before, with the person he was now. "Mornin', Kyren," Ward greeted him. "Hi." Kyren wiggled his fingers in a wave as he popped a piece of fruit into his mouth. "You're looking good. Well, let me get out of y'all's hair. I'll see you Tuesday, Carter. And you'll have an answer for me then?" "Of course," Carter said as he walked Ward to the front door. "I'll see you Tuesday." The door opened and closed, and soon enough, Carter joined Kyren back in the kitchen, grinning down at the other man. "Hey," Carter rumbled. "Hi," Kyren said again. "How was your meeting?" "It was all right," Carter admitted. "Except Ward reminded me of something I'd kind of forgotten about." "Oh?" Kyren ate another piece of fruit as he lifted dark eyebrows in question. "Yeah. It's coming up on 6 months since we've been married." Carter scratched the back of his head. "He brought over the divorce papers today." "Oh? Yeah, but I wanted to talk to you first." "Talk about what?" "It was a business transaction, and it's over now. I appreciate everything you've done for me, too, everything that wasn't really included in the contract. You're welcome, but I said I wanted to talk to you, and you ain't let me talk. Kyren shivered as some of Carter's street accent slipped through, and his gaze traveled from Carter to the ground. Okay. So talk. All right. Carter paused. I might just get right to it. This last 6 months with you has been the best 6 months of my life. Okay? And I don't know if love is a feeling or a commitment or a little of both, but I think I might be in love with you. And also, nothing in the world makes me happier than seeing a smile on your face. Kyren sucked in a breath. He figured the conversation would be something logistical, something technical, about how they were going to divide assets and slowly phase him out of his speaking engagements, but he was clearly wrong. He closed his eyes, shrugging his shoulders up. I know our relationship didn't start out right. If I had to do it over again, I'd do it way differently. But if I had to do it over again, I may never have met you. We already married, but I'd like to be your man not just on paper but for real. Kyren forced a breathy laugh at Carter's admission. I think I'm confused? You're not. If you'll take me, we don't have to get divorced. We can stay together on paper, but I want to date you proper. I want to propose to you proper. And eventually, I want to have a wedding with all our friends and family together. For the press, we'll call it a vow renewal after a hard year of growth. I don't care, but I want you, and I love you. Oh. Kyren was rarely speechless, but Carter was a thief, and he'd stole every word in Kyren's mind. He opened and closed his mouth, sucking in a breath each time. Just say yes, Kyren. Yes, he gasped at Carter's prompting before leaping out of his seat and throwing himself into the other man's arms. He wrapped his arms around Carter's shoulders, nails digging into his neck. Yes. I want that, and I love you too.